Let's start with Eberechi Eze, shall we? talkSPORT's reporting that Arsenal have met with Eze's camp. Podcaster and Arsenal fan Harry Symeou gave us his thoughts on Eze to Arsenal.
I'm a massive fan of Eze. I think he's got that bit of flair, that bit of magic that maybe at times this Arsenal team's missing. I feel like sometimes, we've got the running power, we've got the physicality, but sometimes we just are missing that little bit of guile and technique in and around the penalty area. He's full of confidence at the moment as well, having helped Crystal Palace to the FA Cup, playing a massive part in that. He's at the stage in his career where I think it's right for him to move on, with all due respect to Crystal Palace. And I think, we've been talking a lot about a winger. It doesn't look like Gabriel Martinelli or Leandro Trossard will be leaving. We know that Bukayo Saka's got the right-hand side nailed down. So the idea of bringing in someone like Eze, who could not only play from that left-hand side at points, but could also give you an option in the more central areas as well, I think it makes a lot of sense. Mikel Arteta's always been really big on versatility. And in Eberechi Eze, you've got a player that can do the wide job if you want him to. He can play as an 8, he can play as a 10, he can play just in behind the striker. He's got that versatility about him, and I think that would appeal to Arsenal, and it will appeal, of course, to Mikel Arteta. And obviously with a release clause, obviously there's still some negotiations that would need to take place. You might want to try and trigger that release clause by making a certain payment structure or whatever. But it's not a difficult deal to do, given there is that clear figure for which Crystal Palace would be allowed to leave him. And from what we're hearing and what we're reading, I don't think Arsenal would have any issues, A, convincing him to come, and B, with the personal terms.
Rory Jennings is alongside me. Harry Symeou is absolutely sold. He's all in on Eze to Arsenal. Does feel a good fit, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think Harry Symeou speaks brilliantly about Arsenal, and I think he's absolutely hit the money on the head there. I think Eberechi Eze is everything that Arsenal need. I think he would be the statement signing. He would be the representation of Arsenal's dream, Arsenal's adventure, Arsenal's ability to potentially compete for the league. I think he would be that. I think he would elevate everything at the club. I think he's that sort of player. If you think about what Eberechi Eze has done over the past 18 months, you think about his form for England, you think about his form for Crystal Palace, you think about what he's done for Palace in their pursuit of silverware, you think about the importance that he's played for that team. Big goals, big moments. I don't see the flaw. And most importantly, and I just can't stress this enough, with regard to any transfer, Premier League proven. There is no jeopardy. There is no doubt that Eberechi Eze can do it in the Premier League. There is no doubt that Eberechi Eze can handle the physicality of the Premier League, or the pace of the Premier League, or the intimidation of the Premier League. He is ready to do it at the highest level. And if you think about what it would mean to Arsenal to bring in a player that can play instead of Martinelli or alongside Martinelli, that can play with Bukayo Saka or in place of Bukayo Saka. He can elevate the entire front line, and I think he would make, if he were to say replace Martinelli, and I do think he's a better player. In fact, I think he's a far better player than Martinelli, but Martinelli could use that as impetus to potentially improve himself. But I think the impact that it would have both on Arsenal's left, if he ended up playing there, but also on Arsenal's right. Suddenly Bukayo Saka becomes a better player having a player like Eberechi Eze in the team. Defences can no longer double up on Bukayo Saka, focus on Bukayo Saka, because if they do, Eberechi Eze will punish them. Equally, if they try and double up on Eze, Bukayo Saka will end up in more space. I think it is actually the perfect signing. Chris, if I ask you, hypothetically even, if I were to say to you, in a realistic, so you can't play a game and say Mohamed Salah or Florian Wirtz or anyone like that, but looking at this through the lens of reality, name one player that Arsenal could sign, the perfect signing for them this summer. Potentially think the answer is Eberechi Eze. Can you think of anybody more suited that is a realistic signing?
Well, I might go down the avenue of a striker. They need a striker, and so you could pick one of two. We spoke off air, and I suggested Mateta would be one, but if they're going to go to Crystal Palace, the more realistic one is Eze. You've touched on he strengthens them not just on the left, but he also
throughout the team. Absolutely.
But if you're defending against Arsenal, they're going to score goals from set pieces, as they've shown. If Saka's in the team, they're going to score goals off the right, and they probably are a real threat from team goals through the centre. Not so often from the left. And if you put him in the team, all of a sudden, you've got to find yourself defending on 4 or 5 different fronts. Yeah. Whereas that has not been the case up to this point.
I honestly believe that Eberechi Eze, and this is something that I find quite frustrating when discussing Arsenal. people say, well, they need a striker and therefore they should be signing a striker. And there is obviously an element of truth to that. But just because Arsenal need a striker, it doesn't mean that they don't need reinforcements out wide. It doesn't mean that Mikel Arteta doesn't need options elsewhere on the pitch simply because they do need a striker. And bringing in Eberechi Eze, let's just live in a world where they don't get their striker choice over the line. Suddenly, there is a lot more goals in the team because of the arrival of Eze. Now, I'm not saying that they can get away this summer without signing a striker, but say they sign somebody who I believe isn't quite as good. Maybe they sign an Ollie Watkins there. Suddenly, that signing of Ollie Watkins has a far better complexion to it because they've got Eberechi Eze in the team as well. So I think that overall, Arsenal fans, I know they're panicked about the striker, but they've signed Zubimendi, or at least they're 95% of the way to signing Zubimendi. If they were to then marry that up with bringing in a player like Eberechi Eze, I think that they're having a very positive window.
Yeah, so double thumbs up from you on Eze to Arsenal.
I think it's flawless. I can't really think of a better signing they could make at the moment.
Okay, what about another player who can pretty much do every job in attack? Joao Pedro getting ever closer to Chelsea. In fact, might even be playing on Friday night in the Club World Cup for them against Palmeiras.
Yeah, this is good. This is good news.
You like this, don't you, as a big Chelsea fan?
I do. It's very rare. I mean, 90% of the time that I've spoken on this show about signings that Chelsea have made, I found them fairly underwhelming. But this one I'm totally supportive of because, again, I'm going back to it, but he's a Premier League proven goal scorer. He's a player who we know can do it in the biggest moments. There's an edge to his character. There's an element of venom to the way that he plays.
Too much of an edge? He had a falling out with one of his teammates, got banned for 2 games. He got in a fight, basically, with Jan-Paul van Hecker.
Great, good. I genuinely mean that. Yeah, I do. I really do. I think that we've been a slightly weak team. I think that we've been a slightly... There's a lack of venom in our side. There's a lack of edge in our side. And it's primarily because we're young.
But historically... that was what Chelsea were. I mean, you go back to the 70s, that was there. Yeah. You go back to John Terry's era, that was there.
You absolutely need it. I mean, I find the overlap show, the Stick to Football show, fascinating. But what I learned from watching that, there was an element. There was a guest, Thierry Henry, was on the show, and when he was talking about Dennis Bergkamp, like in my eyes as a football fan, I see Dennis Bergkamp only through the lens of being an artist,
silky,
a beautiful, yeah, absolutely. And then Thierry Henry was talking about Dennis Bergkamp, and he kind of said it like this. He was like, well, we all know what Dennis is like. And the implication was how filthy he was, how hateful he was on the pitch, how dirty he was. And I'm using all of these words in with their positive connotations. Now, Chelsea haven't had enough of that of late. We haven't been a dirty enough team. We haven't been a nasty enough team. We needed a Michael Essien putting in awful challenges. We needed a Ramirez putting in those challenges. We needed a Diego Costa getting people around the throat. We haven't had it enough. And Joao Pedro, I think he's a proven goal scorer in the Premier League. He's a Brazil international. He's young enough that he will have the value that the sporting directors like to focus on. But he's good enough that he will score goals in the Premier League, which is what I like to focus on. And ultimately, I feel like this is the signing that Chelsea need to make. And it comes with another added bonus off the back of signing Liam Delap. It may mean that I won't have to suffer the pain that is watching Nicholas Jackson play football quite so often.
Yeah, we know that you don't like him. Does he go straight into the starting team for Chelsea?
Undoubtedly. I mean, I think the only reason he wouldn't... Are we talking about maybe playing Palmeiras or whatever? I may be in that circumstance.
Well, not so much. I'm talking about your absolute go-to 11.
Yeah, when Chelsea kick off our Premier League title challenge, which I believe we should be doing. I don't think we're favourites to win it. I don't think we will win it, but I think that we should be competing for the league. I think that he is in the first 11, and I also think that if you think about the front line, Liam Delap leading the line, supported by Cole Palmer and Joao Pedro, I think that can give a lot of defences a lot of problems.
It also takes a bit of pressure off Delap. It won't be a Højlund situation where you're going, you're the guy, you got to get all the goals.
Exactly.
You've got options that will score goals from anywhere in that front line.
Absolutely. But I think Liam Delap is actually a player that has a lot of the attributes that we were just talking about, and I also think he's the kind of player that will relish that challenge. You know, when people talk about the poison number 9 shirt at Chelsea, it's not quite true, by the way, but people like to say that there have been an abundance of strikers.
Khalid Boularus.
He
was a number 9, wasn't he?
Khalid Boularus did play Steve Sidwell as well. But
so strange.
Yeah, but I would also say that the signing of Joao Pedro, I think is just a good one. We've signed a player who is Premier League proven, a Brazil international, been scoring goals since he was playing for Watford. And ultimately he will elevate our front line and give Enzo Maresca a load of options.
I did a game down at the Amex last season, sort of March time, something like that, and it was Brighton against Fulham, and it was going right to the wire. It was level in the game, and Brighton got a penalty, and there was ag in the penalty box. Everyone was on top of it. People trying to distract him. Huge delay. He just held onto the ball, calm as anything, put the ball down, finally got to take his penalty. It was the last kick of the game. His run-up was like Paul Pogba's. Remember that slow
Takes 15 seconds. Yeah.
Everyone in the stadium is just like, will he, won't he? Tucked it away. No fuss at all. And I just looked at it and I thought, that's a mindset. That's a mentality thing right there.
Man for the big moment.
Yeah, because a lot of players might have folded. And I know it's only Brighton against Fulham, but it's the last minute in the Premier League and he won the game.
Absolutely. And I've seen him do that on multiple occasions. Scored that goal against Manchester United. Scored a great header against them. Big goal, obviously, beating Manchester United. And scored an iconic goal for Brighton when they played Marseille. They beat Marseille, almost last kick of the game as well. And he picked the ball up in the box, turned a man, beat a man, sort of won a 50-50 and lashed it home. Just a glorious goal in a glorious circumstance as well. And it led to Brighton beating Marseille. God, that's the worst sentence that's ever been said. Brighton and Hove Albion beating the great Marseille. Shows you everything that's wrong with football in one sentence.
It's one of your cult teams, isn't it, Marseille? We're the same age. We go back. Yeah. Chris Waddle, Jean-Pierre Papin, and all that. Okay, next up, we're going to discuss Manchester City and Ollie Watkins. I wonder if a move would work for him this summer. Do stay with us on the Transfer Insiders.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.